They said her wedding would unite kingdoms. They said her smile would calm the storms that haunted the coast. They said she was blessed by the moon and chosen by fate. But fate had never been kind to her name, and the night that should have crowned her with love became the night that reshaped an entire realm in bloodless terror. Her name was Lysandra, the youngest daughter of a minor noble house, raised among cold stone halls and colder expectations. From her earliest memories she was taught that her worth lay in obedience. Walk softly, speak gently, never reveal your mind. Her mother brushed her hair each night in silence, as if preparing her for a future already written, and her father looked upon her not with affection but with calculation. She would be the bridge between their collapsing fortunes and the might of the royal house. The groom was Prince Kalon, golden-haired, lion-hearted, heir to a throne carved in marble and fear. Songs called him the future of the realm. Court whispers called him something else: hungry, restless, born for war but caged by diplomacy. A prince who could charm a crowd but crush a servant for amusement. Lysandra never met him until the day they were bound by vows. She knew only his portrait, a painting too perfect to trust. The wedding was held under a sky bruised purple by an approaching storm. The castle bells sang across the valley while thousands gathered to witness the union that promised peace. Torches flickered in the wind. Musicians played trembling notes, and at the center of it all stood Lysandra in silver silk. A girl trained to look serene even as dread coiled inside her chest like a serpent. Kalon arrived late, smelling faintly of wine. His smile was sharp. His eyes never settled on her face for more than a heartbeat. During the vows he squeezed her hand too tightly, as if testing how much pain she could swallow without flinching. She did not pull away. She had been trained not to. And when the priests declared them joined, the crowd roared with celebration. But the storm arrived faster than joy. Inside the bridal chamber the air turned colder, the candles guttered, and Kalon showed her the truth beneath the prince. He did not touch her with tenderness. There was no affection, no attempt at intimacy. Instead he regarded her like a possession he had paid too much for and resented having to use. She tried to speak, to ask for patience, to remind him that they barely knew one another, but he silenced her with a gesture that carried centuries of royal entitlement. Then he revealed the betrayal. He told her she had been chosen, not out of admiration, nor alliance, nor love. She had been chosen because the court astrologers predicted that the woman who married him would die before her first child, a death that would grant him fortune on the battlefield and power beyond mortal kings. Lysandra was never meant to be a queen. She was meant to be a sacrifice, a good luck charm wrapped in silk and innocence, a bride selected for her expendability. The world tilted beneath her feet. Breath vanished from her lungs, yet she did not scream. She stared at him as thunder cracked outside the windows. Something inside her shifted. Not rage, not fear, something quieter, sharper. A seed placed deep in soil long before she was born finally split open. Kalon left her alone in the chamber after speaking his prophecy as though it were trivial. He did not even offer her a glance when the doors closed behind him. He went to celebrate with his soldiers while she sat on the edge of the bed, unraveling like a thread pulled too tightly. The storm howled all night. She did not sleep. At dawn, she rose with a calm she could not explain. Servants came with food and veils and instructions for the morning procession. She dressed herself instead. She braided her hair with her own hands. She looked into the polished bronze mirror and saw not a bride but something waiting to be born. The first death was called an accident. 3 days after the wedding, one of Sealand's closest advisors collapsed during a council session. His skin grayed, his pulse vanished. Physicians claimed it was a weak heart, but Lysandra had seen the way he looked at her during the wedding feast, the way he laughed when Kalon announced his plans to lead campaigns that would certainly widow her before her time. No one connected the advisor to the cup of wine Lysandra handed him that morning. No one questioned the sweetness that masked the bitterness at the bottom. The second death drew whispers. A maid entered Lysandra's chamber at night to deliver a message from the prince. She never left the room. Her body was found in the eastern garden at sunrise, her face turned toward the sky as if she had seen something magnificent in her last moment. The court blamed thieves, but there were no marks of struggle, no missing coins, only a faint bruising around the throat as if a hand made of silk had taken her final breath. By the 10th death, fear spread through the palace like smoke. Men who mocked Lysandra found their horses stumbling off cliffs. Women who whispered insults behind her back drowned in pools barely deep enough to cover their ankles. A guard who boasted of seeing her cry on her wedding night choked on bread at his own dinner table. No blades, no public accusations, no trace of poison, only silence, only coincidence. only the growing belief that the prince's new bride carried something unholy beneath her calm exterior. Kaelan tried to confront her once. She sat by the window watching the rain. He shouted, demanded explanations, accused her of witchcraft and treason. She only lifted her gaze with serene detachment and asked him to name a single crime she had committed. He could not. He felt fear for the first time, and fear made him retreat. People began to speak her name softly, like a prayer or a curse. The Queen of Silent Murders. The Moon Widow. The Ghost Bride. She never raised her voice. She never raised her voice. She never issued orders, yet nobles bowed deeper in her presence than in silence. Servants fled from her shadow, and the court began to believe that the prophecy was real but reversed. Perhaps she was not destined to die before childbirth. Perhaps she was destined to kill before giving life. Lysandra did not revel in their fear. She used it. She learned secrets whispered behind screens. Learned who plotted against the throne, who smuggled weapons, who bribed guards, who planned to dethrone Kaelan. She eliminated them one by one without leaving a stain upon her hands. Her vengeance was precise, controlled, invisible. By the end of the year, the prince who once treated her as expendable now slept with a dagger beneath his pillow. And every night he wondered if she would be the one to end him before dawn. Her power grew in the shadows. Her legend grew louder than truth. And the kingdom unknowingly shifted its loyalty from prince to queen. The crown did not fear Kaelan anymore. It feared her. And the silent murders had only just begun. They said a kingdom can survive a weak king but never a frightened one. And Prince Kaelan had become a man ruled entirely by fear. He feared shadows. He feared silence. But above all he feared his wife, whose steps were softer than snowfall and whose gaze could unmake a man's courage with a single blink. He feared the way the palace listened to her more than to him. He feared that the prophecy spoken on their wedding night was no longer written for her death, but for his. Lysandra watched him unravel with the same stillness she had learned as a child kneeling in prayer halls. She did not threaten him. She did not seduce him. She did not seek his affection. She simply existed like a quiet storm that reshaped the land one breath at a time. Her power was not loud or violent. It was the slow grip of inevitability. Rumors twisted into myths. Some said she commanded spirits older than the kingdom itself. Some said her hair held enchantment. Others swore that her tears, which she never shed in public, could foretell death, but none of them understood the truth. Lysandra was no witch. She was simply a woman who learned the language of fear from those who once held power over her. A woman who learned what happens when fate is forced upon her. A woman who decided to become fate itself. The murders continued with the precision of ritual. A noble who tried to poison Kaelan collapsed during a hunt. A general who insulted Lysandra disappeared while traveling through the northern forest. A diplomat who spread rumors about her past choked on his own tongue while giving a speech. Each death forced the court to shrink closer around her. Loyalty turned cold and brittle, but obedience grew stronger. Lysandra kept a ledger locked inside a chest beneath her bed, not of finances nor alliances, but of names. Names of those who would fall. Names of those who already had names of those who might yet be spared. She wrote them with a calm hand, knowing each stroke of ink was another thread pulled from the tapestry of fate. Yet power has a strange way of calling to others like it. And one night a visitor arrived unannounced. A foreign envoy named Merrin, a man known for reading people the way others read books. He had heard whispers of the Queen of Silent Murders. He had heard that she killed without touching. He had heard that the prince hid behind locked doors while she walked freely. Merrin was not afraid. He was intrigued. He requested a private conversation. Kaelan refused to allow it. Lysandra insisted. They met in the candlelit solar, the air thick with the scent of ink and wax. Merrin studied her with eyes that weighed truths. Lysandra sat perfectly still, like a statue carved by a sculptor who feared to offend the gods. "I have come from a land where fate is not believed but measured," Merrin said calmly. "Where some are born to change the course of history. You are one of them." Lysandra did not respond. She did not trust men with grand claims. "You hold more power than your husband," he continued. "But you walk slowly, carefully, as if afraid to break the thin ice beneath your feet. You do not need to walk. You were born to command." Lysandra finally raised her eyes, and for the first time in months she felt something stir inside her, not anger and not fear, recognition. Someone saw her clearly. Someone spoke to the truth she kept buried beneath layers of quiet vengeance. Merrin leaned closer. "The prince will fall with or without your hand. The kingdom will follow the one it already fears. Why not give them reason to kneel?" She did not reply, but the seed he planted took root. Seelan's paranoia grew until it infected every corner of the palace. He had his food tested. He had guards standing outside his chamber day and night. He banned servants from carrying metal utensils. He ordered the palace astrologers to rewrite the prophecy, but the stars refused to bend. The kingdom began to fracture under his weakness. Rebellions sparked at the borders. Foreign kingdoms sniffed opportunity, and the court knew who was to blame. One evening Kaelan entered Lysandra's chamber, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. He accused her of treason, of murder, of sorcery. His voice cracked with desperation. He told her she would be exiled at dawn. She listened with the serenity of a woman watching a child throw stones at a storm. When he finished his rant, she stood. She walked toward him. He flinched. She lifted her hand slowly and placed it over his heart. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. "It is beating too fast. That is fear, not of me, of yourself. You have destroyed your own rule long before I ever touched it." Kaelan slapped her hand away and fled. That night he summoned the royal council, demanding support for her exile. But the council members glanced nervously at the doors. They knew Lysandra had ears everywhere. They knew that those who opposed her rarely lasted long. A silence fell over the chamber. No one agreed with Kaelan, not one. He dismissed them with shaking rage. He walked the corridors alone, consumed by dread, and in the long dark hallways, where the torches flickered like dying stars, he realized the truth that had been stalking him since his wedding night. He was no longer the ruler of this castle. Lysandra had taken the throne without lifting a blade. Before dawn, Kaelan disappeared. Some claimed he fled the kingdom. Some claimed assassins dragged him into the marshes. Others whispered that Lysandra visited his chamber one last time, and whatever happened afterward was too quiet to be witnessed by mortal ears. The truth was never found. A body never uncovered. A funeral never held. The kingdom waited for fear to settle. It never did. Lysandra did not weep. She did not declare herself queen. She did not make speeches, nor seek applause. She simply stepped forward where Kaelan had stepped back. She attended council meetings. She issued decrees. She moved with an authority that seemed to have always been there, waiting for a moment to breathe. And the court bowed before her exactly as Marin predicted. But power earned through silence carries shadows with it. One night, Lysandra stood on the high balcony overlooking the valley she once entered as a bride doomed to die young. The moon hung low. The wind curled around her like a forgotten companion. She thought of her childhood, of her wedding night, of every life she had ended without leaving a single mark, and she wondered if she had become free or if she had become the prophecy in reverse. A woman not destined to die, but destined to deal death. Behind her, Marin stepped forward. "You have become what you were always meant to be," he said quietly. Lysandra did not turn. "And what is that?" He answered with a certainty that felt older than both of them. "A queen born not from love or blessing but from betrayal. A queen who does not need to shout to be feared. A queen who rules through silence." The moon glinted against her hair. A queen of silent murders. And Lysandra finally understood that she had not escaped her fate. She had rewritten it. She ruled with the quiet they had once mistaken for weakness, a presence that filled rooms without raising a voice, a patience that outlived plots and tempers, and the kingdom bent around her like a river around a stone. Lysandra learned to read the small things that announced betrayal before it formed into action, too. Notice which courtiers cleaned their cups too carefully, which generals shifted their weight when mentioning borders, which servants paused a fraction too long before answering, and she listened not with ears alone but with a mind sharpened by the night that had been meant to end her. And so her justice became a new kind of law, a cold arithmetic of consequence that left no public stain, and so allowed power to appear discreet and inevitable. Her ledger continued to grow, but its pages were no longer only names to be removed. They were strategies, lessons, and a record of human weakness. She used to bend the state toward a stability that terrified some and comforted others. Under her rule, taxes were rebalanced to steady the peasantry who had been ignored by Caitlin. Trade routes reopened that had been left to rot by indecision, and messages flowed through cryptic channels she alone understood. Yet the populace felt the change as a slow easing, like a winter thaw that whispered safety more often than outrage. Outsiders watched with alarm and curiosity, ambassadors cataloguing the silence as a threat or a talent depending on how many sons they had in the field or how much coin their merchants lost in new tariffs. And envoys arrived, bearing offers, marriage proposals, alliances, bribery disguised as friendship, all of it presented as normal business, yet threaded with the knowledge that Lysandra could make fortunes vanish without a trial and reputations dissolve without a speech. She denied herself the trappings of splendor more than she needed to, because spectacle invited examination, and examination invited enemies. so she wore simple robes in private and let the court gossip that she was frugal or broken. A rumor useful because it kept the curious away and drew the foolish into underestimating her. Power collected around her like mist motions of loyalty that were cautious and conditional, and she met that with a style of governance that kept consequence private and reward precise. A general who secured the northern pass found his lands quietly confirmed. A merchant who rerouted grain to starving towns found his taxes reduced. A woman left destitute by years of neglect received a sum that restored her family to solvency and ensured gratitude that did not need public ceremony. Her fame grew into myth beyond the palace gates. Mothers used her as both warning and promise, telling children that a serene woman could be kinder than a roaring man, but also fiercer and in taverns. The story changed with each telling, so that sometimes she seemed saintly, sometimes monstrous, and often both at once. Yet myth hides truth, and truth kept her awake at night. Because each life she ended or altered had weight, not statistic, and she carried those weights like a necklace of small cold stones against her chest. She had killed because the court had planned her death, and because she had been trained to hide and survive, but killing left unseen wounds. Allies she had eroded into reliance, lovers who might have been surrendered to loneliness, the servants who carried fear like a second garment. In rare moments she allowed the ledger to sit closed and walked the gardens where night scented the roses and the air tasted of rain. And she thought of the child she might never have, because children create maps of softness that did not belong to her anymore. Those private sorrows shaped her public instinct to avoid revenge for revenge's sake, to prevent cycles she had seen in lesser courts where slaughter begets slaughter until only ashes remain. And so she often chose exile or confiscation when it could achieve the same end as death, a ruin of livelihood that left a man alive to warn and to wither into impotence. Yet constraint does not stop resentment, and a network of those who feared her or envied her power grew like mold. In the corners of the realm, men and women who whispered among themselves that a queen who killed in silence was worse than any sword, because a sword at least left a body to curse and a place to strike back. They conspired, and their conspiracies resembled common things. A misdelivered letter, a slightly altered map, a late courier. Lysandra discovered the first whisper late one autumn when a caravan of grain was delayed, and not by accident but by a soft hand on a ledger, who had swapped destinations for amusement and profit. She read the names and traced them back through small betrayals to a friend of Kaelin who had survived the early purge and now wanted back in. Lysandra arranged a meeting in the Solar, a choice she made because visibility for a short time could terrify men who had become used to lurking in shadows. She met them not with guards but with 2 simple cups of tea and a woman whose calm looked like mercy until it ended. She offered them a bargain, and the bargain taught them what her rule meant. Speak honestly and accept banishment, or speak falsely and watch every vault and harbor turned against the family you love. Some accepted exile with a thin smile and disappeared into towns where anonymity still exists. Others refused and met with misfortune that took the shape of slow business failures, broken marriages, and lost heirs until even their children petitioned for clemency. The kingdom learned a new grammar of fear, the fear of irreversible ruin that kept rivals at a safe distance, while the ordinary lives beneath the crown hummed with a new safety that came from certainty. Yet certainty breeds hubris, and hubris creates enemies beyond the realm, and one winter a northern prince named Ed, who had once sought Sealand's favor and been denied, saw opportunity in rumors and set a private company of mercenaries to test the strength of Lysandra's hold. They arrived in the dark like wind and took a border village with ease, cutting throats, burning barns, creating a small chaos meant to lure the queen into an exposed response and to uncover her methods. Lysandra watched the smoke from the palace high window and let the spies bring her precise details, as if arranging a small theater of horror, because she knew that true strength reveals itself not in how violently one fights, but in how one heals what was smashed. She did not lead a headlong army. Instead, she fed the village through secret channels, appointed a steward who could rebuild, and incentivized neighboring lords to patrol the passes by paying them in coin and honor a grid of favors that created a net stronger than walls. She cut off supply lines to the mercenaries, let winter do its work, and when Idrun finally received a letter from a man he thought safe begging for rescue, he found the pleas forged, and the men he sent to save their village vanished or taken and returned with stories of cold and hunger and a realization that the campaign had been a misread and a mistake. Idrun withdrew, humiliated but alive, and word of the failure spread like a hard winter sun. The crown that once surrendered to a prince now stood steady because a woman had taught the realm to move without the clamor of trumpets. Yet every triumph teaches new methods of resistance, and a small group of women in the court who had lost daughters or husbands. 2 early knights disliked the way Lysandra walked free and untroubled. They began to craft a narrative about the queen who killed in silence, as a witch whose power could not be prayed away and whose smile hid a blade. They gathered signatures and rites and petitioned the archbishop to intervene, not for law but for spectacle. The archbishop, a man eager to sow piety to his name, found the petitions a tool, and he raised questions in sermons about mercy and sin and the proper use of punishment. The public debate that followed was dangerous for Lysandra because it touched the one place she had never conquered and could not touch directly: the pulpit and the hearts of ordinary devout folk. She responded not with force, but with a slow cascade of changes. Improved almshouses funded by her private purse, open days for markets in which the common eye could see her investing in grain and charity, and in the end a painful exhibition of her rule in which she publicly pardoned a low-born man accused of theft and instead established a system of fair courts in remote regions where before men had been judged by crude panels. The archbishop found his sermons diminished in power when the poor who once whispered complaints now whispered thanks for bread. His influence cooled, and with it the loudest voices against her. Slowly narratives shifted again, and the queen of silent murders became in the public mind a queen of stern justice, a woman who had broken the cycle between private cruelty and private vengeance. Time softened the sharpest edges of her legend, and generations taught their children that she had been harsh but necessary. When old age crept toward her like the dusk she once watched alone on the balcony, Lysandra did not finally rest in a bed of roses or in a triumphant parade. She closed the ledger, and summoned a council to teach the mechanics of governance without spectacle to those she trusted, most men and women she had shaped by example rather than force. She left behind laws that favored stability, that respected common life, and a compact in which silent consequence no longer meant secret murder but calibrated accountability. And in the quiet years after her death, bards altered songs to speak of a queen who had been betrayed and who had remade betrayal into policy, a ruler who turned the knives meant for her into instruments of statecraft rather than tools of personal vengeance. The kingdom survived, and the story of Lysandra endured, complicated and unsettling because she had been both victim and architect, both cruel in the beginning and necessary in the end. And when people argued in taverns about whether she was saint or monster, the answer always returned to a single stubborn truth. A woman who is betrayed on her wedding night can become a queen of silent murders, and in doing so can teach a realm that silence can be refuge or weapon, and that power wields a morality all its own.